him. The nightmare is finally over. We're going to talk about all that and more coming up next on American Horror Story Dissected. Hey everybody, welcome to American Horror Story Dissected, or Horror Story, either one. I'm Alex Zalbin, managing editor of TVGuide.com, joined as always by Sadie Guinness, also of TVGuide.com, no relation. Sadie, this was the end of the first act of the show. What'd you think? How did it all turn out?
I thought it was kind of anticlimactic. I was expecting a lot, and instead it kind of ended with a bit of a whimper for me.
Well, let's get into it, but first let's put up our spoiler alert over there. There we go. Oh, very beautiful. So you guys know we're going to be talking about Chapter 5 of American Horror Story Roanoke. So turn away if you don't want to know. There were tons of connections, tons of spoilers, tons of things going on, even if it did end with a whimper. But the biggest thing, the only question we have gotten for 4 solid weeks is where is Evan Peters? And finally, in the opening moments of the show, we got to see Evan Peters. So what was going on with his character, and do you think it was worth the wait?
It's definitely his weirdest role yet. Evan Peters is playing Dandy Mott's longtime ancestor, Edward Philippe Mott, who is definitely an eccentric dude, left behind his wife and kid in Philadelphia to go live in a house he built with all of his art. And
his lover.
And his black servant lover, and they rouge each other's nipples before sex. It's very weird.
Let me ask you a question. So Dandy Mott, we'll talk a little bit more about this connection in a little bit, but Dandy Mott is from Freak Show, right?
Yes.
Do you think that they're what if his ancestor was a Dandy Mott? And that's pretty much where they let it? Like he was an actual dandy?
I think Dandy's real name was also Edward, if I remember correctly. But it definitely is a play on the word.
Sure,
dandy.
There you go. My absolute favorite thing about it, though, we were talking about this a little before the cameras rolled, there were a bunch of different disparate things happening throughout the episode. I kind of loved at the end when, for no reason, Evan Peters ran in and saved everybody. It was like, come on!
I don't get it.
I'm ridiculous. I'm a ridiculous ghost.
Why is he nice? He was not a nice dude when he was alive. He murdered all of his servants. Also, why didn't he save them? If he's a ghost who can interact with the world, why didn't he go and let out all of those people?
And why is he showing up now? Why is there just an increasing amount of very themed ghosts? That's what I don't get. Regardless, fans were very excited to see Evan Peters back. It's always great to see him on our television screens. But we may be saying goodbye to a couple of other actors because we did finish up probably the show within a show. So do you think this is it for Cuba Gooding Jr. and Sarah Paulson? Is this the end?
No way. We saw in the promo for next week that we're going to be breaking down the fourth wall. So I think we're going to see Cuba Gooding Jr. and Sarah Paulson playing the actors who play Shelby and Matt.
Oh, there's so many layers to this. It's like a delicious, sweet, terrifying onion. But do you think, at the very least, Sarah Paulson and Cuba Gooding Jr., they're done with Shelby and Matt at this point,
Yes,
right?
I think we're going to see them play new characters / technically the same character.
Ooh, sorry, Sarah. She just got chopped in the head, so...
There are some theories that Sarah is going to be playing Billie Dean Howard this season. Maybe Billie Dean's an actress now. Maybe she's producing this show. I have no idea, but we're definitely going to be seeing more of them.
Yeah, well, that'll be definitely interesting to track. Let's talk about the show within a show, because there are still so many questions about what was real, what was going on, how much truth there is to Shelby and Matt's story. One of the surprising weird moments to me was when the butcher gets thrown in the fire. Sadie, can you kill a ghost?
You cannot kill a ghost,
Okay.
but you can slow them down.
All right.
The butcher took a corporeal form in that scene. And so, while you can't kill her, you can, subject her to some physical obstacles. Throwing her in the fire slows her down, but she popped right back up.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you another question. This is pure speculation at this point. But if we assume we're going to see the stuff that happened at Roanoke or at the house in real life, and we're going to see the real people that are playing the actors.
I think we're getting a different cast to play the butcher, to play Edward Mott. I really hope Finn Wittrock comes back to now play Dandy's ancestor.
Who could possibly live up to Kathy Bates as the butcher, though? Jessica Lange, right? I mean, that would be a crazy twist.
I would have said Frances Conroy if she was not already playing one of the actors in the show.
Right.
But I do think it'll be someone from the Ryan Murphy world. Maybe the woman who played Miss Evers last year in Hotel, Mare Wingingham.
All right, or maybe I'll just throw this out there, Leah Michele. She'd be a great butcher. That would be the best. Well, let's talk about what's next, because there was a teeny tiny little promo put out there. As you mentioned, it is of the show behind the show. So let's show that off and tell us what we're seeing here, Sadie.
It's found footage, yet another classic horror trope this season is using, and it's Cheyenne Jackson like leading the camera into a very nice looking building, saying like, do not stop filming no matter what.
So there's a pretty popular theory, though, right, about what is going on at this point?
Well, we already heard Cheyenne Jackson's voice once this season when he was interviewing Lee/Adina Porter. And so I'm like 99% sure he's a producer on My Roanoke Nightmare. And I think he's gonna dig more into Matt and Shelby's story, maybe even go to the farmhouse himself now.
The thing that I was taking from it that I thought was interesting, because he was saying, whatever you don't turn off the cameras, whatever happens, even if I tell you to stop here in the office, I wonder if the ghosts have followed them back. If they followed Shelley and Matt off of the reservation, and we're going to see the ridiculous sight of pilgrim ghosts wandering through a Hollywood office.
Ghosts are trapped to the specific locations as they
Right.
establish in Murder House. But maybe he has proof that Matt and Shelby were lying about their whole story, and he's like going to confront them in a great reality TV way. Like the reason not to film, maybe it's supernatural, maybe it's just because he's about to do something terrible to someone.
There you go. Whatever it is, we'll find out about that next week. And now let's go to our next section, Connect the Dots. There we go. Sorry, Dot. But there were a bunch of connections in this episode. We've touched on some of them already. First one we'll talk about, this is the only thing everybody really wants to talk about, Evan Peters' beautiful face. There was a little bit of an Easter egg there. What was going on?
When you see him hold the torch and it goes across his face right there, his face had that skull look that looks exactly like when Tate Langdon painted his face to go murder all of his classmates in season 1. So I thought that was like a really fun little connection. I don't know if it means anything, but
I took it as more of a visual connection than anything else, right? All right, so that's Evan Peters' face. Unfortunately, we do need to move on from that. Let's talk about the Motts a little bit. So what was the connection there? I mean, it was pretty explicitly stated, right?
Yeah, like we learned a little bit about the Motts last week, and this was just more of a deep dive into Dandy's ancestor, how he bought the house, how he died, and we also learned that Dandy was the last of the Mott line. So like R.I.P. crazy, psycho, rich people.
Yeah, here's something that I thought was interesting, and maybe I'm reading into it way too much, but Evan Peters' character, Edward Mott, died in fire, and then Dandy Mott died in water.
Interesting.
Ooh, there we go. I don't know what that means, but I'm just throwing it out there. You guys on the internet, you figure it out. There's one more connection while Dandy Mott drowns behind us that we should probably go into. And this is one from American Horror Story Hotel. This was definitely your eagle eyes noticed this. I didn't pick up on this at all. What was going on here, Sadie?
Well, there's been this theory all season, the theory of sixes, where each episode corresponds to the corresponding season. That was not an eloquent way of saying it, but you get it. Like, first episode corresponds to Murder House, fifth to Hotel. And so when the ghost came and dragged out Edward Mott, he like ripped through the bedding, much like happened in a Hotel multiple times. We saw Max Greenfield tear himself from a mattress, or right there. Like, it was a nice visual homage to Hotel.
And that kind of ties back to the Evan Peters tie as well with his face, where it's more of a visual thing than an explicit, oh, this is the same bed that was in a Hotel or anything like that, right?
And Evan Peters really was all of the connections this episode, because once again, we saw him being an eccentric man building this kind of crazy fortress for himself, which is practically who he played in Hotel when he was Mr. March and built the Cortez.
Here, I'm going to throw a crazy thing out to you. What if every scene of every season of American Horror Story so far has been a show within a show, and we just haven't known it yet?
Oh, no, that theory is very popular on the internet. Some people think Cheyenne Jackson is going to be playing Ryan Murphy, and he's going to be the R in the Jane sisters' murder. it could go anywhere after this, and I'm just excited that we can finally get to this twist and see what the actual season is about.
And that said, we should say there's one more twist coming because they said from episode 6 through episode 9 is its own chapter, and then episode 10 is its own thing as well. So even though we're having these huge twists, there may be another huge twist down the road, right?
You never know with this show.
You never know. This show is crazy. And you guys are crazy for watching, so thanks for doing that. Sadie?
Stay spooky.